Hello, I'm going to show you how I do a head swap in Photoshop. I have two files here that are open. This is the one that I'm going to be using because everything looks fine here. This is the one that I'm going to replace because the bride has a piece of hair in front of her face, and rather than try to just edit this out, I think it would be easier for me to just swap the head from this one. So these are already edited and everything looks the way I want it to. They're pretty similar lighting and everything, so it should work really, really good. So the first step is to grab the head of the person that you want to put on the other picture. So I'm going to use this, no, that's not it, right here, the lasso tool. This is what you use to make the selection. So I'm just going to click and hold down. I'm going to select an area pretty big around her head to give me a lot of room to work with. I'll show you how I do this in a minute here. So I'm going to start up here, and just in case, I'm going to grab this. I'll just do this, and up to here. It doesn't matter if it's like totally perfect because we're going to fix it later. But then I'm going to select the move tool from up here, click and drag this selection over here. So you saw how that happened. If you touch the tab on the file that you want to go to, I'm not letting go of the mouse right now. I'm just holding down, and then I'm gonna bring it over here and drop it by letting go. And you'll see that it just dropped it right on top, and it's a new layer on top of the old one. So imagine that this is like a photograph that's a print and it's on your desk, and you just took another print and you cut with scissors out the head of the other one, and you just are laying this layer on top of this layer. And that's what we just did. So now we're going to try to line them up as good as we can, and I can see that they're not going to line up perfect, but that's okay. One of the tricks I use to get them to line up as good as possible is I go over here and adjust the opacity of this layer, bring it down, and then you can see underneath. See, if I turn the opacity all the way off, then you can't see that layer at all. But as you bring it up, you can see it. So if I make it about a 50% opacity, then you can see underneath, and you can try to use this to line up the faces as good as you can. Sometimes zooming in helps a lot. This will just make things a lot easier here. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna bring the opacity back all the way up to 100. Now here's where we blend the two photos. So with this layer selected, the top layer, which is just the head, I'm going to click this tool, this filter, which is a mask. It adds a layer mask on top of this, or next to it. What this is it means that anything that's white in this area, which it's basically like an invisible mask that's covering the whole picture. Since it's white, anything that's white in the picture will show whatever is on this layer. Anything that's black will be masked out. So here, I'll show you, and maybe it'll make more sense if you don't understand. Down here is our colors, and this is our top foreground color, and we're going to make this black, so it is black. Just make sure it's black. This switches between, so you want to make sure that the black is the foreground color. And then we're going to use a brush tool. So I'll do this with 100% opacity just so you can see what I'm talking about here with the mask. So you want to make sure that the mask is selected. You can see how when I select the layer, the little brackets are over here. When I select the mask, the little brackets are over here. So you want to make sure you have the mask selected, because this means we're going to be painting on this mask. And we're painting in black with the paintbrush at 100% opacity. So you can see how it will erase the layer. You can also use the opacity lower, and it creates more of a, see how right here, since we're only at 33% opacity, it doesn't erase the whole thing. It's kind of like it's a little translucent, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. Hopefully you're getting it. It's kind of a hard concept to understand at first, but once you understand it and it clicks in your head, you're like, oh, I totally understand. Another way that you can use this mask and not paint out 100% of the layer is you can change this to a gray color. By doing that and having this at 100% opacity, it also won't. See, you can still see some of it, but not all of it. But I don't like to do that, because then you have to kind of like be changing the gradient of the gray all the time, and in theory it works, but it's just a lot easier if you keep this black and just adjust the opacity up here. I'm going to erase this layer mask, or delete it here. No, I'm going to delete it and start a new one so I can show you. If you have this set to, let's say, 40% opacity, and you're painting with black, each time you make a stroke, that's 40%. Each time you make a stroke, it's going to apply more, kind of like you're painting with, a real paintbrush. So each time you make a stroke, it's going to reveal more and more of the layer underneath. So I really like doing this because you can blend things in really easy this way. So this is how I would have my settings, probably at about like 30 to 40% opacity. I usually adjust the hardness of the brush, which if you have it at 0% hardness, it's going to be super feathered and very, very soft and blend really, really well. Hard 100%, you can see the edges are like completely straight, like there's no softness to it at all. And we don't want that because it doesn't blend well, see? So I keep it probably, I don't know, at about 40% to do this, just so that we can kind of brush it in really softly. So I'm going to make sure that this is all blended. You can see her necklace there, so I think I'm going to, oh, here's a trick. If you hit the letter X on your keyboard, it'll switch these foreground and background colors for you, just with a click, so you can really quickly switch between them. Now, we've been painting with black, which hides the layer. If we switch it to white, it'll reveal the layer, so I'm just going to fix that so that there's only one necklace there. So back to black, and we'll paint the mask over this, and right there, and there's a couple stray hairs up there, but that maybe right here looks kind of funny. Just kind of blend this in. Back to white. I'm just going to get rid of this weird little shadow thing here. Perfect. Alright, there we go. So if I turn this layer off, you can see the before and then after. And looking at the after, I can see that right around her necklace here, there's a little bit, it's lighter there, but you know what? I don't think anybody would ever even notice that if you had no idea. So I'm going to leave it and call it good. So there you go. That's how I do a head swap in Photoshop. Hopefully this helps you.